Hi, folks. This is Lee W. Mowen, the host of the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast. I've been hosting my podcast on Anchor for some time now, and let me tell you why it's the easiest way to make a podcast. When you host with Anchor, you have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your computer or phone. Anchor then distributes your podcast for you so others can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more platforms. You can even make some money with your podcast with no minimum listenership required. And best of all, it's 100% free. It truly is the one-stop shop for those looking to start a podcast. To start, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Anchor.
Day 7 of Streak Week. We're coming to a close on this 8-day, 8-episode run on the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast, and this is episode 162 with Stuart Mason. Stuart Mason, along with, I believe he said 35 other folks, helps run megasportsnews.com, and he's a 42-year veteran of the radio broadcasting industry, especially around here in Southwest Ohio and Columbus, Ohio. Can't wait to get to the interview. But first, a quick word from our network of 12-Ounce Sports.
Hey folks, this is Lee W. Mowen of the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast, and I'm here to talk to you about MyBookie. Since 2014, it's the place where you can bet on anything, anywhere, anytime. Get up to $1,000 on your first deposit bonus. Use the promo code 12OZSports. As well as sports betting, you can play some casino games, take in some live odds in Madden 20 and NBA 2K20, and even bet with Bitcoin. Visit mybookie.ag and use that promo code 12OZSports. That's 12OZSports. MyBookie, the industry's most rewarding loyalty program.
It's episode 162 of the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast, and our special guest is Stuart Mason, a 42-year veteran of the radio broadcasting industry, the owner of megasportsnews.com, and someone who's seen a lot of sports in his career. We'll talk about his career, local sports, and more on this edition of the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast.
Welcome to the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast with Lee W. Mowen. This is a weekly podcast dedicated to sports happening in the Cincinnati and Dayton, Ohio region. Visit theleewmowen.com/podcast to listen on your favorite platforms like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, and more. Follow the host on Twitter at the Lee W. Mowen, and the podcast at CindayPod. Opening theme is Arpy by Dan Hennig from the YouTube Music Library Collection. Now for your host, Lee W. Mowen.
On the phone right now is Stuart Mason. He owns megasportsnews.com, and he is a 42-year veteran of the radio broadcasting industry. Stuart, it's great to have you aboard. How are you this afternoon?
Lee, it's great to be a part of your show. I'm doing pretty good. I took a little nap because I got to go to work so early and do a lot of different things. So I took a little nap to get ready, and we're ready to go.
It's great to have you aboard, and I believe this is going to be a great episode. So let's begin. Where are you from?
I'm originally from Dayton, Ohio. That's why you always see me down in the Dayton area covering the Wright State Raiders and the Dayton Flyers. I love those two schools and those two those two athletic programs. I always have I've been in Columbus since 1978, but I've always kept in touch with my hometown teams. I've been covering the Raiders since 1982, and I think I've been covering the Flyers since '83. So I keep abreast of what's going on down there in Dayton.
Luckily, Columbus isn't too far from Dayton, and that's how I met you, from a Dayton Flyers women's basketball game. I don't think it was the A-10 tournament, but it was somewhere close enough to that.
Would have been maybe the NCAA tournament?
No, because this year was the first time, we ever talked. I forget which game it is. Was it George Washington? I don't know. I'm at Dayton Flyers game. So, but when did you get into sports? What started your love for sports?
Well, I grew up watching and listening to Chris Harris and Bucky Bockhorn during the Flyer games. I remember years ago I used to listen to the Raiders. Then I always loved Tom Hamlin and Omar Williams, those guys. And Hamlin used to do the Flyer games, and then Omar did the Miami Redhawks, which at that time was the Redskins. And I just always thought that I could do it if I was given a chance. Now, my mother wanted me to be a school teacher, so I do have a degree in that. I did that for a while. It wasn't for me, but I always in college did radio on the side, because in our business, you have to have something on the side. So I had to make a decision. I was part-time in radio the first 5 years, and then I had a decision to make whether I wanted to continue to teach or continue with radio, and then full-time. And then my wife said, you do whatever you think is right for you. So to go back a little further, I went to Otterbein College. I was at Ohio Dominican for about a year. Got to learn the DJ side of the business, and then I went to Otterbein, and they do all kinds of sports. And so I met Dom Taberry, who works at Channel 10 here. Him and Cabot Ray, we all went to school together. And I begged Dom to let me do sports. I said, if I do one game with you and I mess up, I'll never bother you again. Well, I've always been one that's been so prepared. He said, okay, you do the whole pregame show. So the first game I ever did was Ball Wallace basketball against Otterbein College, because they're in the OAC. And so I came with all this stuff prepared, and Dom said, you're going to be fine. You're going to be okay. So Dom Taberry kind of was the one that gave me my big break as far as sports broadcasting.
And Dom's been in the Columbus area for quite some time now, hasn't he?
Yes, Dom was a year ahead of me in school, because I went to Sinclair to start off, because I didn't know if I wanted to go 4 years. And then I messed around and had to go to Ohio Dominican because I got my stuff in too late at Otterbein. They said, well, you can come in the next year. So I kind of was in college a long time. I was 2 years at Sinclair, got a degree there, went to 1 year at Ohio Dominican, and then finished up with 3 years at Otterbein. So I was one of those 6-year guys. But Dom's had a blessed career, because he started as an intern at WBNS 10 TV here in Columbus, and he's been there ever since he was an intern. And he's another one of those 40-year guys in the business. You might want to talk to him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get into the Columbus area that much, but I know his name just because he's had a very long tenure career in Columbus, and it's just one of the names and that's coming from someone that really hasn't seen any Columbus TV. So definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when did you decide that you wanted to be a broadcaster?
Oh, wow. When I was in high school, we had a radio station, and I think WCDR or something like that. But anyway, we had a little radio station. They took an old janitor's closet and made a radio station there, because I went to Chaminade Julienne, and I went. It was my first year was just Chaminade. All the boys were at Chaminade, all the girls were at Julienne. Then my sophomore year, they combined the two schools, and I really didn't want to go to Chaminade at all, because it was all boys school. My mother said, well, just go there for a year, and if you don't like it, you can go to Rolfe, because we lived in the Rolfe school district. But then I loved it so much. I made so many friends and people who I'm still friends with, and it was a great experience. So I got involved in radio, and then it kind of translated over to college, and so I did that on the side along with doing my teaching and stuff like that, and my studies. And so I was fortunate enough and blessed enough to work in professional radio when I was a sophomore in college. So that goes to show you I was good enough at the time, but I still had some seasoning. I still had some things to learn. and I used to have a real bad speech impediment. I couldn't talk to you like I'm talking now, but my wife got me in these classes, and that got rid of that speech impediment a great deal, and it's really helped me because, in our business, you can't really have a speech impediment and be successful in this business. You'll never go anywhere. But I was able to get rid of that, and so that was when I basically, started to get into radio. I mean, I knew I wanted to do it. You just have to, in our business, you have to get the chance.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me your first big break in the broadcasting field?
Yes. I was working, I was doing some internship work at WCBO in Gahanna, and Paul Patterson, the late Paul Patterson, God rest his soul, he gave me a chance. WCBO at the time was a non-commercial station. Their funds came from donations and stuff, and so he saw something in me, and he hired me on staff, and then there was a job that opened up at WCLT AM and FM in Newark. The Pricer family owned that station, and they still do to this day. Doug Pricer was the program director. He hired me, and I got to work there for a little bit, and I got to learn about automation, and they had an AM and FM station, so I got to work on AM and FM and then do some sports, and so that panned out. And then what happened was the Pricers decided to go another direction, and I wanted to, I didn't like driving to Newark every day, so although Newark's not that far from Columbus, I just didn't like, my wife didn't like the hours I was working. I was working midnight. I was working 4 to midnight, and it was kind of cutting into our family time. So, because I had just got married right before I took that job. So then WCEO, Pat Patterson said, I got a full-time job for you. We're going to let you be our sports guy, and we're going to let you flourish, and we're going to let you learn, and we're going to let you do what you basically want to do. And so I got to do all kinds of stuff. I mean, I did, I worked overnight. One of the things that when you're in radio and you just start out, Lee, I think you probably know this, they'll let you do what you want to do, but you got to do what they want you to do first. So I had to work as a DJ, overnight, and then I would come in at midnight and work, and then I would get my sports together, and I would record it during the times when I was working church programs and stuff like that. And that worked out pretty good because I would record stuff in the morning, and you would hear it like, I had sports reports 20 till basically inside of the bottom of the open spots. The church programs ran like 25 minutes, so they had to fill spots instead of filling with PSA. They put sports in there. So I got to do in the 6 a.m., 7, 8, and 9 a.m. Hours in the morning, and then I did a 5-minute sports report at noon, and then at 6 o'clock in the evening I did a sports report. All this stuff was recorded in the morning overnight. So, and I always knew how to make it to where people thought I was actually there. And they let me do all kinds of stuff. I did an Otterbein football report, and I did a Capital football report and basketball with both schools. And so, because I felt they were the two Columbus schools, so I got to do both those. I learned how to do a regular show, interviewing coaches. I got a good rapport with the coaches and stuff. So WCVO was really my big break because I was there for 8 years, from 1982 to 1990, and I owe a lot to that station because they let me show my talents, and I learned everything. I mean, we had WCVO might have been a Christian station, but we had so many talented people at that radio station. It was unbelievable. And we had so many broadcast studios. Like you could be in one studio doing production. You could be in another studio on the air. And there was a main studio, and there was 2 or 3 other studios. There was even a studio in the basement. I mean, that station was so well equipped. And I got to learn. I could go in the studio and work out all the kinks on the air. They would air check me, and they say, Stu, you got to work on this and this and this. And so I was able to learn a lot. And I thought to be honest with you, you get in a job and you settle in, you don't want to move. I never wanted to leave that station because I felt that was my safety valve. Well, Pat Patterson told me one day, he said, Stu, you're getting too good for us. And the money we're paying you, you can only go so high. So then I left there and went down to WLOH in Lancaster, and I showcased that I could actually work amongst other people and really, really be good.
That was going to be my next question. After 1990, I mean, you've had a long 42-year career. What was after Lancaster?
I've got a chance to work at some really good radio stations. After I went to Lancaster, LOH at the time was brother and sister with WHOK, which was K95 FM. That was the country station. I got to meet a lot of great people, and I learned from a lot of people in my career. I mean, I learned from Jeff Dickerson, who's now, I think he's a mayor down in Logan, or council member or something. I learned from Max Raines. I learned from Carson Cornell. I worked with Scott Haskins, Marty James, Terry Silver, Stephanie Booker. I learned from all these people. When I was at WCVL, I worked with Gary Flory, who's a pastor now, Dan McLaughlin, he's a pastor, Melvin Royster, William Dotson, Anderson Reed. I worked with so many people. And then I always said I was going to work at WVKO, which was the black station here. And my wife was always pushing for me to work there because she could hear me, right here in the city. But anyway, I got a chance to work there. And right across the hall was K95 WSNY FM. So I got to work with. I was fortunate enough to be the rover. And I got to work at these other stations when I was working at WCVO. Pat Patterson didn't care as long as it didn't interfere with what I was doing at WCVO. But when I was at VKO, they went on from sunrise to sunset, and I was the floater guy. I got to work morning show, the middays, and the evening show. And then on weekends, I got to work 2 shifts. So I got to learn from Casey Jones, the late Kirk Bishop, Keith Antone. Then on Sunday 95, all the talent that we had on those 2 stations. You had Chuck Martin. You had Bob Nunnally, Bob Simpson. You had Marty McNeil. I could just name a lot of people that we had that I learned from, and I was sitting in the studio with these people just watching and writing. And they said, "What are you writing?" I'm writing down everything. I think that's one of the reasons, Lee, why I've lasted so long, because I learned how to do more than just DJ and do sports. I can do news. I've done remotes. I've done just about everything in radio, with the exception of running a station. I mean, I've never run a station. I've been an assistant PD before, but I've never been like the PD, or I've never been a general manager. I really don't want those 2 positions because I just don't want to do those. But I just love what I'm doing. I've had a blessed career. Who would have thought I'd be in it this long? And you know how our radio's changing these days. I mean, a lot of us has been around 42 years. I mean, how often will that occur anymore in our business?
I don't think a lot, just because of the fact, a lot of radio stations aren't locally owned anymore. They're owned by a big enterprise, a big conglomerate, and you see all these news releases of, hey, we're going to release all these people now because we need to save money. Bye. It's just
right.
It's tough. Now, my next question is, when did you start operating megasportsnews.com? That's
a good question. It really wasn't me. It was my late wife, Nancy L. Mason. My wife used to follow me around, and by me working all these different jobs, when I started doing football games up at WPKO, I did football for them for 25 years, and my wife would tag along with me, and she had this notebook, and she was writing all this stuff down. We did games. I did what they called the bonus games, and I'll tell you how that started. WPKO, they always had a game of the week on the FM and a game of the week on the AM. The Chieftains were on the AM, WBLL AM, and then WPKO FM was always the best game of the week. And then I always did the bonus game, which was the second best game of the week, and sometimes ended up being the best game of the week. But Lou Vito had this idea, and he said, "Stu, do you have your own broadcast equipment?" And my wife and I used to buy equipment, like radio stations I worked for would sell equipment, and Nancy said, "Well, I'm going to buy this stuff for you." She had this vision. My wife was kind of like a little reader. She just had a vision of stuff. So we would buy all this stuff, and I had a studio, always had a studio at home. So my wife was writing all this stuff down. She said, "How do you guys get these games on the internet?" I said, "Well, you need an air card, and you need to have you have to download a program from the internet." And so we were using EasyStream. So when we started megasportsnews.com, we were using that, and now we're using Meridix.com. But anyway, my wife came up with this for my 52nd birthday. It was 10 years ago, because I'll be 62 coming up in about 3 days. So she said, "How would you like to have a megasportsnews.com?" I said, "Well, what is that?" And she said, "This is something I'm working on. I've been having it in my mind, and this is what we're going to do." So I said, "Okay." I said, "I don't know what I would need with a website, because I know updating websites, and I know how that is." So my wife got called some of my friends and people I worked with. So most of our staff is people that I've worked with or she knew. Nate Smith, who works for the Bell Fountain Examiner, he was the one who he was the person who developed the website, because he's a website developer, and so he was one of my partners on the broadcast crew at WPKO. And so him and Nancy were getting together. I didn't know nothing about all this. So anyway, Nancy, we had all this equipment, and so Nancy said, "We're going to broadcast the Columbus City League games." Well, nobody here in Columbus was doing those games other than maybe a few TV games here and there. So I told Nancy, I said, "Look, you cannot just go out and do games at these city schools or any school. You got to talk to the AD. First of all, you got to talk to the superintendent of schools," which we made an appointment. We went to talk to her. So then I told my wife, I said, I asked her, I said, "Well, you wanted me home on Friday nights. Other than just doing football, you wanted me home?" She said, "No, I want you to do these games because it's important for the kids." So February 15th, 2010 was when Mega Sports News became a reality. And so what my wife did was she captured the fact that I was a radio guy and I had all this information. I had all these contacts, and I had all these people that I knew, because I told her you just can't put releases and stuff on websites without getting permission. So the fact that I knew MLB and I knew MLS and all these different things, she sat down and called all these people and asked permission. They said, "Yes, as long as you give us credit." So that's how Mega Sports News became a reality. And it's not just me. We have like 35 people that work with us. So but it capitalizes on what I can do, but other people have a lot of strengths too. So and I got some people that are very, very loyal to me: Charles Farmer, Jeff Rapp, some of these guys you might have heard of. Let's see who else. Josh Kazinger, Tony Fisher, Dan Hopp. We got a lot of people that have been with us since day one. We got like 15 people been with us since day one. So it's been more of a success than I thought it would be. And to be honest with you, it's not really nothing I've done. It's the work of a lot of people.
You mentioned 35 other folks. I mean, that's a lot of sports.
It is. We got people that can write, can post. I get a lot of people from around the country I don't even know. And they just say, "Hey, I want to do something for Mega Sports. Can I do this and this and this?" And I say, "Yeah." And so I met a guy at the First Four in Dayton 2 years ago, I think when Texas Southern was there. They're from the Houston area. Mm-hmm. And this guy just happened to see me, and he said, "You're Stu Mason, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah, who are you?" And he said, "I know you from megasportsnews.com. He said, "I'm a follower." And I'm like, "Well, thank you." So I always ask people what we can do to improve things. Now, there's some things we're going to do to improve the website. There's some things I want to do to incorporate. I think we need to do some more videos and some stuff like that. And so I'm going to be working on that. I'm going to upgrade the website a little bit. And you're probably wondering, how do I have time to do all this stuff? Well, my wife, when she passed, she left him in charge of it, because he's more of a general manager than I am, because he's been a manager of different businesses. So he takes a lot of load off me. He deals with all that stuff that I don't need to deal with. Now, the final call is my decision. Like, if it comes down to a money thing, he'll come to me and say, "Okay, do you want to do this or not?" And I usually, if he says, "Yes, let's do it," if not, I'll say no, because he knows more about the business than I do. But if it wasn't for him, and then Stephanie Lee, she worked with my wife. She was my wife's goddaughter. Mm-hmm. she worked close with Nancy, and she's the one that got all the sponsors. And the thing about our sponsors, this is something, my wife was kind of smart. She, all the sponsors we have are basically people we dealt with, and they're no more than 5 miles, within a 5 to 10 mile radius of my house. Wow. And so Stephanie Lee, she takes care of all that stuff. And now if we get a new sponsor, so I want to meet the owner, then I got to dress up and go meet these people and all. It's no big deal. But generally, people that sponsor with us have heard about us from other people. And so, I mean, you know, that was my wife's dream. I mean, she basically, when she retired before she passed, that's all she did was the website. And I let her deal with all this other stuff. And the only thing I did was just broadcast the games. Every once in a while, you see me write a story or post or whatever. But basically, I just do the broadcast of the games. That's about it.
Your wife sounds like an amazing lady. I mean, that story and the reach of the website and the success, that's great. I know that.
And you know, Lee, when my wife passed away, a lot of the people on the website I thought the website was going to go away, to be honest with you, because they were so loyal to Nancy, because she just had a way with people. She could get people who would say no to say yes. So I had to tell everybody, I got everybody on a conference call, and I said, guys, I got some bad news. And I told everybody, and there was so much crying, and I said, but if you guys don't want to continue with this, I understand, because you were loyal to Nancy, and she got you aboard, blah, blah, blah. They said, no, we still want to keep her dream alive. And then, you check this out, Lee, her voice is still on a lot of the spots we do. Now, some of them have been deleted because, obviously, some things have changed, but some of the sponsors said, now, I want Mrs. Mason's voice to stay on. You can get somebody else to do a newer copy, but this is what I want her voice to remain. So we have her voice on a lot of spots, and it's really strange because I'll be at these games and I hear her voice, and I'm like, I'm trying to not tear up, but I do because I hear her voice. Because I don't hear her voice any other time until I do a game. So, but the sponsors, that's what they want, and you know how it is. This is a sponsor-driven business, and what they want, they get.
Pretty much, money keeps going in. You know, the dream keeps alive once the money stops. Yeah. So, I mean, that is a tremendous story. So, what do you cover as a broadcaster with Mega Sports News? You mentioned the Columbus City League. Tell me some of the teams and the sports that you get to do.
Well, you know, my job at WPKO and WBLL, actually VTech Communications, my job is I'm one of the main reporters for that station. So whatever I cover, I get a chance to post it on the website. Now, the station obviously gets the first dibs on the audio and all that kind of stuff, and then I kind of do other things so it don't sound the same. So like I say, for instance, I go cover a NASCAR event, and the winner is Jimmy Johnson, okay? The cuts that I don't use, and I'm also, I don't know if you know, I also do stuff for iHeartMedia, Metro Networks, all that. So I'm doing a lot of national correspondence stuff. So I'm pretty experienced enough. Whatever cuts I give Metro, I don't give the station unless they ask for, I want that particular cut or whatever, or I need something from this guy. So I'm able to get enough cuts to where it don't all sound the same. So, but I cover NASCAR, NHRA, IndyCar, MLB, Major League Soccer. Let's see. Oh man, I've covered so much stuff. I don't do a lot with the NBA because the NBA's never really. What's the word I'm looking for? They've never really responded to me that much. I used to do some stuff with the Cavs, but the NBA is one entity I hardly ever do anything with. But you name it, we do it, and I'm able to post all that stuff on the website, and that's what basically makes the website go, because all the stuff that I have access to, it's really, really good. You know, like I said, I do Ohio State basketball, Ohio State football, and you know, I used to do University of Cincinnati football and basketball and Miami Redhawks football and basketball, but I just don't have time for that stuff. Right? I just don't have time for it. And, you know, I used to do Dayton football. I do that every once in a while. Every once in a while, I'll do Otterbein and Capital just to get them on. because they've been really good to us as far as giving us information and stuff. And the OAC schools, I get their stuff on, and I think next year we're going to try and get some of the NCAC schools, like the close ones like Muskingum and Ohio Wesleyan and Kenyon, and get their stuff up. So there's some things we can do on the website to improve that I want to do, and my schedule is going to scale back here enough to where I'm going to be just doing game coverage only. And so I had another little job I was doing on the side to help people out. I don't do that no more. Like I said, I'll be 62 in 3 days, and I want to scale back on some things so I can have time to make sure this website is updated and all that stuff. Because sometimes when I'm away, the website don't get updated like I want it to. So, like one day, I think one week we went like a week, and I told the guys we can't do that. We gotta be, if we want to be the best, we've got to update the website at least every other day. Don't wait 5 days or 10 days, because then people don't want to be bothered with us anymore. So that's where my attention will come. My opening up more time will help with that.
I remember a while back, you were very excited to call, was it Centennial Stars basketball game? And that's one of these.
Yes, Centennial. I don't know if you know, their football team had a lot of firsts this past year. We got to do them and got to feature their players. And I tell you what, Coach Goolsby's got that program going, and then the basketball program under Roosevelt Osborne, he's got it going. And I tell you what, Centennial is one of the up-and-coming schools in that City North Division.
Take me through some of Columbus sports. It's something that I don't know that much about. Take me through what goes on during a normal season in Columbus, Ohio, USA.
Well, you got I'm pretty busy in the fall because you got the Columbus Crew soccer. It's still going on. And then during the summer, that's basically all I have. And I don't do too much with the Columbus Clippers. I just don't have the time. I usually have somebody else do that. But, you got the Crew and the Buckeyes running at the same time. Then the Blue Jackets start up in September. So I'm doing that. That's one of my beats. That keeps me busy because I'm at just about every home game unless there's a conflict with Ohio State or Dayton or something. But Columbus sports, there's a lot to do here. There's a lot of sports to cover here. Obviously, Lee, as you know, there hasn't been nothing to cover since I think the last event I covered was the Flyers when they played George Washington. And I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm keeping busy. I'm still doing interviews on the phone like this, and I've done some interviews with some players and some Hall of Famers and stuff like that." But Columbus sports, when things are going okay, it's pretty vibrant, because you'd be surprised when the Crew might be playing the game, they'll have 20,000 people. The Blue Jackets might have a game in the same day, and they'll have about 18,000 people. And then the Buckeyes, if they're playing the same day, they'll have 100,000 people. So, sometimes you got all these sports running together, and all of them have plenty of people that like those teams. So, when I first came here in Columbus in 1978, all we had was the Buckeyes and the Clippers. We did not have the Crew, and we did not have the Blue Jackets. And that has really made this town very attractive to a lot of people because now we got pro sports. And, there was talk about us maybe getting an NBA development team, but I don't know if that'll happen because Canton's got one. But that would be nice if we could have the NBA development league here. That'd be nice. Or a WNBA team or something like that. But I think we've got enough sports here.
I mean, there was also the Destroyers for 2 spells, and next year they're supposed to come in with another indoor football team. And, man, I really wish last year that Destroyers team won more than one game because, it was great to have them back in Columbus.
You know what, they were. I missed them when they left before. But I do know that if they could just find the right people to run the Arena Football League, that's a very entertaining sport. I mean, it's all about offense. It's not about defense. And I love it. And then the giveaways, the fans get to keep the balls when they go in the stands. And they have these giveaways. And I like the league. I even found time to go to a few games because, generally the Blue Jackets, they weren't playing. But the they always, because they share the same home with the Blue Jackets. But the thing of it is, though, it was funny to see this football field inside of an arena. It's so exciting.
Yeah.
And, you'd have these games. I remember one time when they were here before, the coach of the Bears was the quarterback of the team. That's when we went to the Arena Bowl. And Matt Nagy. And there was a game, something like 70-61. I mean, who ever heard of something like that in football? But it was great entertainment, Lee. I tell you, it's like you said, they're talking about coming back with another one next year. So, the fans came out for the games. I mean, they really enjoyed it, and the ticket prices are affordable.
I think when the Destroyers came back, they drew close to 8,000 in their return.
Yeah, and when they were here before, they were averaging about 11 or 12, I think. But those teams were a lot better. This team just had a lot of bad luck. I mean, there was at least 4 of the games they could have won. But it just goes to show you that Arena Football League was all about experienced teams, and upstart teams just didn't have a chance. Because, like I said, there was 3 or 4 other games they could have won. They could have at least been 5-7, but they ended up 1-11. And even in the last game, they almost had a chance to win. But I just kind of wish they found a way to get the Arena League back here, because it was really, really exciting. And they gave a chance to some of the Ohio State guys and some of the Otterbein and Capital guys it gave them a chance to hook on, because there was a couple of players that played in the City League that was on the Destroyers team. And that was great to see, because I saw those kids play in high school, and then to see them play on a pro level, that was great.
Absolutely. I think I remember seeing the Germain Carr family. They bought the controlling rights to the Indoor Football League. They have like the Iowa Barnstormers. They have a couple teams in the Midwest. I think they have one in Arizona. So, I mean, with all this coronavirus, who's to say that's going to happen? But still, that was an interesting tidbit I saw. It's like, wow, bought the entire league's control and coming back to Columbus. I'm really hoping it happens in 2021, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more indoor football in Columbus, just because you mentioned it's such a great sport. My 2 years broadcasting Dayton Sharks at Hare Arena, man, that was fun. I mean, you can bounce off walls and stay in bounds. I mean, like you mentioned, the fans got to keep the balls as well. There's nothing like it.
There isn't, and another thing that the Arena Football League did that the NFL or some of these other football leagues don't do is that they let the players have access to the fans and vice versa. After the game, after the media gets with the players, generally there's a select group of players after the game, the stars of the game, as you will. They always had an autograph session, and they had all these photographs. Players would sign them, and they would personally sign them, like to George from whoever. But anyway, and then they got to shake the players' hands, and they got to take selfies with them if they wanted to. It was it's just a great family atmosphere where you could take your kids and meet the players that play on the field. I mean, how many times do you get a chance to do that? And like I said, the Germain family, they're one of the bigger. Everybody here in Columbus thinks Reichert Automotive they're big too, but Germain is one of the big ones. And that family's got a lot of money, and they know how to do sports advertising, and they know how to get people not only to their dealership, but they also know how to get people to the games. And they had a lot of the sponsorship that the Destroyers had, even the 2 times they've been here. So, the Germain family, I have confidence that they can get things done. But like you said, this coronavirus has really affected a lot of people, and it's really sad because, as you know, a program that we love, the Wright State Raiders, they've had to cut back at least 3 programs that I know of. And, a lot of people were blaming Bob Grant and all that. But you know what? They're not the only school. There's other schools that have cut back. And so a lot of these little minor sports is going to take a hit because they have to save money somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, that was a heartbreaking day to see Wright State cut softball, but I'd never blame Bob Grant. it's not like Bob Grant's like, haha, I cut sports, haha, it's a great day. It was quite the opposite. He went on a press conference saying it was like the worst day he's ever had professionally. It was sad, but I mean, Urbana University closed up shop, like totally everything is closed, and they've been in business since the 1830s.
That was surprising too. Lee. I mean, because Urbana University had an up-and-coming sports department.
Absolutely. They did some work in the Mountain East and Division II, but I've always heard rumors. I don't know how truthful they were, but I always heard that the budget was always kind of not great at Urbana. I don't know how true that was, but
well, you know what, they played at Urbana High School, which is almost like a college stadium, one of the best, because I called a lot of ball games there, and that was a nice stadium, and that's a nice community too. You kind of feel for those fans because they love that school, and there was a lot of kids from Columbus that went to school there. So you know that was sad that when I heard that, because I can't remember where I was at. I was on the road somewhere. And somebody said, I was visiting some family. And somebody said, did you hear about Urbana University? I said, no. I thought maybe something happened where somebody got in trouble or something, but you know how that is. And so they said, no, they cut everything. I'm like, what? They're one of the up-and-coming schools.
It was sad. I mean, when I was at Central State Broadcasting for a year, Central State and Urbana, that was a great rivalry. And I remember those basketball games at Beacom Lewis being tremendous. And like you mentioned, Urbana, they had a lot of great teams, and now nothing. Not even school. They're closed.
And I think they beat Dayton in football one year. I think they won on a field goal or something, and Dayton's football team is one of the best around for a small college, if you're going to call it a small college, but a lot of those Division I schools in a non-scholarship football. But yeah, they beat Dayton one year, so their programs were on the rise.
A couple years after I graduated Wright State, I knew Urbana baseball beat Wright State. I believe it was Urbana. It was like 6-3, and that was a really good Blue Knights squad. But yeah, I mean, it's a shame. And that leads me a little bit further down the questions. How has the coronavirus affected you and your jobs? It seems like you've kept quite busy, but how has it affected you?
Well, I haven't been able to cover anything live. Now, I've done a lot of teleconferences, and I've done like NASCAR has a teleconference, IndyCar. I've done those, and then Ohio State has something every once in a while with Gene Smith and Ryan Day and Chris Holton. And I did an interview with Ryan Mikesell here lately. I did some stuff with Obi Toppin. Let's see, who else did I do? I did a Hall of Fame series thing where I did Paul Petrella. He was at Otterbein, or he was at Baldwin Wallace when I was at Otterbein, and so he's a Hall of Fame wrestler for Baldwin Wallace, one of the stars of the OAC back in the 70s, 80s, or back in that time period. So I've been keeping busy, and I'm doing stuff with you, and I've done stuff with Mike Goodpaster. I think you might know Mike Goodpaster, don't you?
That name sounds familiar.
The Grueling Truth podcast.
Why was I thinking?
I've done some stuff with him. He's down around. He's in the Indiana, Cincinnati area, like the Batesville, Indiana area. You know, like they call it Casketville because that's where all the caskets are made. I hate to say that, but that's what that town's known for.
I never knew.
And so I kept busy with doing that kind of stuff, you know. But and then I found out that for the first time in years, I probably won't be able to cover the Brickyard 400 because they're only going to let like some national people do and cover that. So you know, there's going to be some things that is different from me and some of the other guys who are regulars at some of this stuff because you know NASCAR is kind of slowly. They don't have fans back yet, but they're slowly getting other things going. I was talking to Matt Humphrey, their director of communications, and he was telling me the other day about, because I told him, I said, I haven't really heard anything about Indy, but he told me like what might happen. But then Kentucky's coming up, so I might get to cover that. Okay. And then you've got Eldora, and there's enough space at Kentucky where I think they could fit guys in with the social distancing and that kind of deal. Because most of the guys will be in the press room, most of them will be up in the press box. There's plenty of room down there. And then the Blue Jackets will be coming back to finish up their season. And then the crew's going to be down in Florida, so we ain't got to worry about them no more until next year. The Buckeyes will be starting back, so it's going to be different. And probably you're going to see guys with wearing masks interviewing people, which you got to get used to doing that.
Yeah.
I felt like hey Lee, did you see what I put on Facebook that day? I had a mask on. I said I was one of the Slavery brothers.
I don't remember that, but that's great.
Because you're not used to wearing a mask. You look like a robber. You know what I'm saying? I hate to say that, but it's the truth.
I mean, yeah, it's my mask has always been the medical stuff, so it always looks like I'm coming out of a hospital or something. But yeah, it's just wow. I mean, could you ever imagine something like this happening? The COVID-19 pandemic and the quarantine.
You know what? When all this stuff shut down, I said, you know what? I bet it's going to start. It's just going to be a trickle down effect. It's going to change the shape of how we cover games and how we cover sports. I understand it because we don't know what germs you're spreading. You don't know what germs people are spreading. You just don't know. And I can understand they want to take care of the competitors and all that and everything, but it's just going to be different because I've never, ever experienced anything like this in my career. And I've seen a lot in my career. I've seen how technology's changed and how the internet's taken over and social. When you go cover a game, you got social media. I got all these accounts I have to keep up with during the game, like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all this stuff. Some guys do all this other stuff. I can't handle more than 3. I'm not going to do all this other stuff these guys doing, TikTok and all this other stuff. But it's really weird, Lee, because who would have thought this? I mean, 2020 has not been the year we thought it was going to be.
I was really hoping 2020 was going to be something special, and I remember starting off great. I mean, one of my hockey games has a highlight used in SportsCenter Top 10, and then February goes great. I get through high school hockey season, and then March goes around, college baseball, and then there's more talk of the coronavirus, and then bam, everything shuts down, and I get 1 baseball game at Wright State, 3 at UD, and that's kind of my last sports left. So it's been tough, but I mean, with my podcast, I'm able to interview folks that I've always wanted to get on the podcast, and that's how I'm staying busy. And I'm hoping there's high school football.
Oh yeah, I'm hoping for high school football because we started First and Goal. And my wife picked that name out before she passed. She said, no, if you do Columbus City League football, I want you to name it First and Goal. So then High School Bounce, she came up with that for basketball. So we've been doing – Columbus City League just love the fact that we're doing their games. I mean, it's been great for us. It's been great for them. The kids, when they see me and Josh coming to the games, they say, oh, we're going to be on tonight. They are so pumped up for that. And I love doing it because, I love working, doing the games for 25 years up at WPKO. But I'm kind of glad, they wanted to go another direction in the football. They wanted to get younger, which I can understand that. So because I had it in my mind, if this happens, because my wife, she was kind of, like I told you, I told you she's kind of a reader. So she said, one of these days you might want to do games in Columbus because one of these days they might phase you out. And so, you know how that is, Lee, in our business. They phase you out sometimes. But anyway, football, what happened was it just came about where I had everything ready to go just in case. So when they told me they wanted to go another direction, I said no hard feelings because I was still working there, still doing covering the games. That's all I care about anyway. And so it came down to me just finding a partner, and I knew I had Jeff Rapp and I had Charles Farmer, and then Josh just kind of came to us in our lap. He because I have a deal with the radio broadcast school, the Ohio Broadcasting School here in Columbus, where we have use them as interns and stuff, and I found a nice photographer for them. We've had other people that worked out for us. We've had other people leave us and go elsewhere. Like we got a guy that Travis Windler. He left us to go to the Chicago Cubs. We had another person leave us and go work for the Reds. So we've had some people that have come through us and gone on. But like I said, by me having my own equipment, I could do, the mega sports. That's why it's successful, because my wife had that vision of me having my own equipment, and my wife left us pretty good as far as monies. Anything we need, we can get. The sponsors help us out. Like the sponsors pay those OHSAA fees, and we go to tournaments. So we're sitting pretty good. We as far as the website, we don't have to worry about no money. So anytime we need something, we got it. We got some of the best equipment. Whenever I needed a computer, like I had a sponsor last year that went out of business, Mega Pawn Shop down on High Street, and he had been a sponsor for 10 years. And one day he called me in there and said, "Hey, come on down and pick out what you need for your broadcast." But he still paid his fees and everything, and even though he was going out of business. And I felt bad. I said, "Wait a minute." I said, "You don't need to pay your fees. You're going out of business." No, he said, "You brought us a lot of business in 10 years." So, we had this good rapport with these people. So we feel blessed. We're not the biggest website. We're not Columbus Wired. We're not one of the big ones, but we're well respected, and that helps.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the reach that you had. Someone from Texas Southern, knew who you were. That's huge. I mean, the work that Mega Sports News has done, it's phenomenal, and it's a very good website, and I definitely recommend for anyone that hasn't visited, go. It's a good time. It's a good sports site. So, Stuart, I'd like
and folks, we take suggestions. You think there's anything we need to put up or anything we need to do, let us know. There's comments. Let us know. We're willing to. You can send us any comments at megasportsnews@gmail.com, and we welcome any comments, pro, con. If you don't like it, well, you let us know. We need to know these things. That's how we get better.
Stuart, I'd like to shuffle over to some of your favorites that you saw in your 42 years of working the business. Give me some of your favorite athletes you got to cover, your favorite games, your favorite moments. Take me through your favorites.
Oh, I tell you, we could talk hours on this, but I tell you what, the best thing that I have been able in my career and blessed is that I was able to interview all the members of the Big Red Machine. Like, I cover the Reds, so I get a chance to see those guys at the ballpark, talking to Pete Rose and Johnny Bench and Cesar Geronimo and all those guys. And I talked to Henry Aaron. I got a chance to talk to Tony Oliva, Harmon Killebrew, because they used to have this, and I wish MLB would come back to this. They used to have a thing called the Equitable Old Timers Games. And that's when all the old timers from the old school days would come and play these old timer games. They'd be in Cincinnati and they'd be in Cleveland, all over the place. So that's how I got all these interviews, because I go and I show up and I be prepared, because they send out a list who's going to be there, and I have all this information, the little file cards and stuff. And so I got a chance to do Billy Williams, and I asked Billy Williams something about, I knew he was from Mobile, Alabama, and I asked him how come there's so many good ball players from there, and I asked him something about his dad, and he said, "How do you know all this information?" I said, "I can read. I can research." We had a good old time. I talked to Mr. Cover, Ernie Banks, Ron Santo, you name it. I could talk all day on this. I mean, I got to do Vin Scully, talk to Nolan Ryan, Don Drysdale. Even though I was a Reds fan growing up, there was a lot of players that I liked on other teams. Like, I talked to Lou Brock. I got a chance to talk to Bob Gibson. Tom Seaver. You just name it. Jimmy Wynn, who just died here recently. I got a chance to interview the Toy Cannon, who's a Cincinnati guy. I've had I've got so many interviews in the archives that I've done with people. It's just been great. Some of the best events I've been to World Series and Super Bowls and all that. Probably the 1990 Super Bowl stands in mind to me, covering that because the Reds were such underdogs to the Homer Happy Oakland A's at that time, the Bash Brothers, I think that's what they called them.
Mm-hmm.
That was great to see. I mean, the Reds, when Eric Davis put them up 2-0 when he hit that homer off Dave Stewart. And the funny thing about that was they put the overflow media in the outfield, so we were sitting in right field. Our whole right field upper deck was mostly media. So when you're sitting in the outfield, you can tell if a ball's a home run because just by the height. So when Eric hit that ball, we're sitting out there and we knew it was a home run. I mean, because just by the height of the ball, the Reds are going to be up 2-0 here, and then it was fun to be a part of that crowd. And out there, we could see when you're sitting in the stands, you can root, but if you're sitting in the press box, you can't. So, but that was great. Another thing got to cover, was all these games with the Buckeyes and these bowl games that I've been to. I've been to a couple of national championship games. Just being around the Buckeyes, because I've been covering the Buckeyes since 1983, so I go all the way back to when Earl Bruce was the coach, and I saw some great players, and Chris Spielman and William White and Greg Fry, and I mean, you just name it. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I was at a lot of those Michigan games when Coach Cooper could not win. I like to say that because I love Coach Cooper. Yeah. But I just had a blessed career. And the thing of it is, Lee, I get to cover the teams that I like. And, who gets to cover the teams they like? And, I know we're not supposed to be rooting, but we do. I'm not going to lie about it. We do. We want to see the Buckeyes win. We want to see the Flyers win. We want to see the Raiders win. We want to see the Bearcats win. We want to see the Red Hawks win. I want to see all those teams win. I want to see the Cardinals. I want to see the Crusaders win. As long as the Crusaders aren't playing the Cardinals, I'll root for Capital. So, but the thing of it is, I just had a blessed career. I mean, I've done just about everything. And somebody asked me when I was going to retire. Now that's a tough question because when you're having fun, you don't know. Sometimes you don't know when to retire. But my dad always used to tell me, he said, "You'll know when it's time." And so I'm at 42 years. If I can make it another 3 and make it to 45, I think I'll be satisfied.
Can you remember any favorite broadcasting moments that just come to mind right off the bat?
Yeah, one game I remember when I was at Otterbein, even though that was college radio, but still counts. Otterbein was played in Division III, so we got to go down to Savannah, Georgia, and play Savannah State. Now, Savannah State currently is a Division I program. They've made that progression from Division III all the way up to Division I. Well, at the time, Dick Reynolds was the head coach at Otterbein, and he was we used to call him Digger Reynolds because he was almost like Digger Phelps, and he patrolled the sidelines like Digger Phelps. And so Coach Reynolds was a great coach. I think he went over 600 in some games, probably 700. But he took a team. Our tallest player was Steve Johnson. He was 6'3". And we had all these. We would have one 6'3" guy and all these little guards that could shoot, like Ron Stewart and Dino Guansel, and Joe Benson, and all these guys that could shoot the ball. And one thing about Coach Reynolds, he always had 1 or 2 big guys, but he had all these shooters all over the floor. So we go down. We play Savannah State, which is a predominantly black school, and they have all these skyscrapers. They got guys 6'8", 6'9", 6'10". But the thing of it is, our guys were so quick, and then we were underdogs because that was the Division III semifinals. And we go down there, and I'm working with Dom Taberry, and Dom said, "We get blown out, we're going to do a short post game and get the heck out." I'll never forget that. And so I was doing color, he did play-by-play because that was Dom's last year, and then the next year I succeeded him on play-by-play. So we get down there, and we go into 3 overtimes, and we beat them 91-88 on their court. And, Dom said, "Man, these guys are tall." I said, "Yeah." I said, "But you know what? They ain't faced a team that could shoot the ball quick like us, can run and gun. They had never faced a team that could run and gun with them." And so, because, Savannah State was winning games like 101-50 and 95-40, but they didn't have they never faced a team like Otterbein. So, and I'm always an optimist. So, Dom said, "I don't think we're going to win." I said, "I think we are." So anyway, we got down 10 early, and then they called a timeout. Colonels called a timeout. And then after that, we were in the game the whole way. And then we won the game when Ron Stuart, who was our best scorer, he was 5'11", and I think he had 35 points in that game. But anyway, he scored on a field goal and won, and that gave us the difference in the game. But that was one broadcasting highlight as far as when I was a color commentator, as far as play-by-play. One game, I was doing a game one time. The Lancaster. I did games in Lancaster, and Lancaster was playing a team. I can't remember if it was either Findlay, but Lancaster was down like by 15 points. They just could not hit a shot. Then it got to the point where they were trading baskets, and then Coach Jack Greathouse, who was a great coach, no pun there, but he made a couple key substitutions of guys who hardly ever played, but they came in for defense. And they shut down the two top scorers, and then they went on like a 35-2 run, and ended up walking away with the game. I think they won something like 95-70, and they were down like 10, 15 points. So those are a couple games. I mean, there's probably some others, but those are two games that stick in my mind.
Stuart, what are some of your favorite things about sports, not only in Southwest Ohio, but Central Ohio?
Favorite things. I'm trying to think. Well, be a little more specific. I'm trying to think here. That give me a chance to think a little bit.
Okay. Well, basically what I'm asking is just what's your favorite things about not only working in sports, but just witnessing sports? I know the main theme when I ask this question for other guests, it's just there's something for everyone down in Southwest Ohio. I mean, if you like a sport, it's down here. And, I mean, everything is available for any fan. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, just your favorite things about sports around here that maybe aren't in another part of the United States or anywhere else.
Well, I tell you, I just like being able to just travel around and cover all. I do stuff with the Bengals, and I do the Reds every once in a while when I can. I like the variety. I'm in Dayton. I'm here in Columbus. Anything here is 20 minutes from my house. I just like the fact that I get a chance to cover a variety of stuff, and it's right here in the state. You know what I'm saying? I can go up to Cleveland. Do the I don't do much, like I said, I don't do much with the NBA or the Cavs, but the Indians. I don't do the Browns because I do the Bengals. But just the fact that I get a chance to cover this Ohio sports, and it's just such a variety. I mean, like here in Columbus. I mean, when I came here, this was just a Buckeyes town. Now you got the Blue Jackets and the Crew, and the Clippers have always been a mainstay. They've always had a winning tradition, so that's nothing new. But just the fact that I don't know if it's answering your question right, but just the fact that I get a chance to cover all this stuff, and I have time to cover it, which is basically sometimes I wonder how I have the time to do all this stuff.
Now, let me ask you this. What would you like to see in the future of area sports or area media? Like, what do you want to see happen in sports? Like addition of teams, leagues, media, more radio stations? What would you like to see in the future?
Well, I tell you what, I think I mentioned something like that earlier. Some of the fans here want us to get an NBA team. I don't think that ever happened because there's too many NBA teams right around. Detroit's not far away, Indianapolis, Cleveland. I don't think the Cavs would ever let that happen. Maybe the NBA Development League, I could see that. Maybe get one of those, maybe a WNBA team. I'd like to see that. I'm trying to think if we've got everything else. I think Columbus, if I remember right, is supposed to be getting a minor league soccer team, too, to take over at Moffrey Stadium when the other team goes downtown, when that opens up next year. And this has been kind of a sad year because this was supposed to be Moffrey Stadium, one of the last times we'd be there for games. But I think next year there's going to be a few games we'll be there, and then they'll close it out. and that's going to be a training facility. But yeah, I would like to see us get some, and then like the indoor football, I'd like to see that come back. Those are the things I would like to see.
Didn't Columbus once upon a time have a development team, the Columbus Horizon, and they were on WCOL or something like that?
Yes, you're right about that. I love covering the CBA. The CBA, you know, Cassie Russell was a coach here. We had Bill Klukas, who was one of the great scouts in the NBA. We saw a lot of good players come through here. We saw Ron Spivey. We saw Chris Childs. Let's see who else. We saw Greg Anthony come through here. We had some great players. The Columbus Quest was here. I wouldn't mind seeing, like I said, women's basketball come back. The Columbus Quest, they were good the 3 or 4 years they were here. Katie Smith was on the team. We had some of those Tennessee volunteer players on the team. I mean, it was great. We had a couple Purdue Boilermakers. I think Janon Rowland was on the team. We had some great teams here. I got to cover that, and that was a great experience. And they played their games down at the convention center, Battelle Hall. That place was always rocking. I mean, they would sell out every game. And the ABL, only thing about the WNBA came in and bought out the ABL, and you know, we knew when that happens, oh boy, there goes our team. But I'm glad the Quest was able to win the title 2 years in a row, because those were some great teams. And I know the ladies, they would love to see women's basketball come back here. That's something I think that that would fly here if they could bring it back.
What advice can you give for folks wanting to become part of the media or the broadcasting industry?
Only thing I can tell them is this is not a 9-to-5 job, and I think you know that, Lee. There's things I do when I come home from work. You got to have a stick-to-itness to this job. Don't ever let anybody tell you can't do it, because a lot of people used to tell me, because I'm black, that, oh, you're not going to make it in this business, not for you. Well, nobody's going to tell me that, because I'm a hard worker. And I think that's why a lot of people know me, because they see me everywhere, and they know I work hard. And I think that's why Lou Vito and Judy Vito and Chad Wilson, why they hired me, because they know my reputation is I'm a hard worker and I'm reliable. They don't ever have to worry about if I'm at work or if I'm covering games or whatever. They know I'll get the job done. You got to be able to work long hours. There is no, I have to take off this weekend because I got my girlfriend. It's none of that. Mm-hmm. If you're that kind of person, you're not going to make it in the radio or TV or any of this kind of media stuff, because it requires a lot of time. It requires not only zeal and zest, but it also requires your attention, stick-to-itness. You got to work hard. You got to earn it. Nothing. All these kids nowadays, they want it now. It's not going. I thought I wanted it now. It's not going to happen. I really didn't start thriving in this business until I was 5 years in. 1984 was the year that. 1984 was the best year. That was when my career really jumped off. Because I worked you're not going to believe this, but I did. I worked for 3 radio stations at one time. I worked for CVO. Mm-hmm. I did the sports for them. I worked for CTNT, which was the bomb, which was cable television radio, which was unheard of back in the day. But Keith Willis, Frank Kelly, that was his moniker. He was Keith Willis in Dayton at WDAO. He was Frank Kelly at VKO here in Columbus. He went to school with my brother at Rolfe, and I got to meet him. So he gave me an air shift and worked with me, and I got really good on the air. And then I worked for Kix 106 in London. And so one night on the air, I used to have the overnight shift, and Joe Bello, he said, he was listening to me in the car. He called in on the hotline, and he said, "Stu, you're sounding really good here the last few weeks. What's been going on?" He knew I worked at WCVO. He didn't know I worked for CTNT, because I only worked for him like on the weekends, and then I would come in and work when somebody didn't show up or whatever, or late or whatever. And so London's only 40 minutes from my home. So, and I've always lived on the east side or south side, so I was always close to the freeway where I get to where I got to go. So I got good in this business because I was willing to put in the time. And then my wife, she ran me around. We had a little van, so I would sleep in the van in between jobs. she'd run me to where I had to go, and I had to, obviously had to give her a little bit of money on the side. But I was willing to put in the hours and the effort necessary to make it in this business. And anybody can make it in this business, male or female, if you're willing to do the work. You got to get down there. You got to be gritty. You got to know how to get down there and willing to work. If you're willing to work, you're going to be successful like Lee and like me.
Absolutely. Stuart, how can people follow your work and you on social media?
Okay, on Facebook, I got a Mega Sports News page. That's on Facebook. Twitter is Stu Mason at Mega Sports News. Mm-hmm. And then Instagram is Stu_Smith25. Now, Smith is my mother's maiden name, and 25 is my favorite number for my uniform number from playing baseball and softball all those years.
Very good. Stuart, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a lot of fun learning about you. And again, visit megasportsnews.com. Thank you so much for giving me an hour of your time today.
No problem, Lee. Hey, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. And anytime I'm available for you. No problem at all.
Thank you, Stuart. And that will wrap up episode 162 of the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast. We'll talk to you again for episode 163.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast with Lee W. Mowen. To subscribe to the podcast, please visit theleewmowen.com/podcast. From there, you can choose your favorite platform, such as Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, TuneIn, Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, and many more. Interact with the podcast and host on Twitter at the Lee W. Mowen and at CindayPod. Like the Facebook page, the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast, and download the free Flick Chat app, then search for the local Cinday Sports Group to submit your future Mowen's Mailbag questions. The closing theme is Lights Go Down by Dan Hennig, provided by the YouTube Music Library Collection. This is Lee W. Mowen, and I hope you enjoyed this week's podcast. Please join me again next week on the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast.